Hey guys, just finished watching Doom Patrol Season 1, Episode 7, Therapy Patrol. What an interesting episode. This episode was so crazy and kind of, just like a down-to-earth episode. I mean, nothing really kind of moves on. We don't really even kind of move on the story or anything like that. But we do a little bits at the end. But this whole episode takes place just by going through this one day type thing, and kind of we get everyone's kind of bits and pieces of it, how their day begins and stuff, and how their day is going terribly, and then it ends with like a therapy session, hence the therapy in the name of the title of the episode. And I think it was really kind of interesting dealing with all that. It was kind of really kind of interesting, kind of seeing all the different. Everyone's different perspective and stuff. Rita kind of dealing with her emotions and how her body is getting connected to her emotions and stuff, and she can't just control her stuff. She has to control her emotions, and that's what controls her body and keeps it in shape, literally type thing. And I think she falls into an event and ends up in the furnace and stuff, and I think that's kind of interesting later on when she's like, I wound up in a furnace, and she's like, oh, what a great metaphor, and she's like, no, a literal furnace, and that was just kind of a great moment there. It was kind of really cool dealing with all that and seeing all that kind of history, and her kind of bringing up that there's something that she's done she doesn't want to talk about, but she, it's kind of looming over her, and nobody's kind of holding it over her, right? And I think that's really interesting. We find out in this episode that Cyborg's tech is starting to read his subconscious and stuff because of in the last episode at the end of it, Cyrus, his father unlocked his stuff and set him up in privacy mode so that he's no longer watching over. He went in and hacked his own stuff and unlocked everything completely, and now his tech is kind of reading his subconscious even though he didn't ask for it. So I think that's going to be interesting to see as to where things kind of go with that. Is that going to be kind of a hiccup later on? Because I think that's going to be a more interesting idea, and I think that could be a more interesting way to kind of. Because it seems like with Cyborg, they have a bit of a problems with him sometimes being a little bit too overpowered and stuff. It's easy with a character like Jane. You have Crazy Jane who has all these two powers, and she's always overpowered. But you can just say that they're all fighting for control, and that's the easy way to have her not be the answer to all problems, right? But for Cyborg, it's a little bit more difficult because it's just him in there. But by having his tech kind of, reading his subconscious and being too tech, and I think it's really interesting. It makes his tech more powerful because he can hack into, security cameras on a bus, which is interesting and stuff. But because of that could come to bite him in the ass later on. I think that could be really interesting. I think that could be quite an interesting way to kind of, to handicap the character without literally blowing off his arm like they did in the last episode. But then they brought it, or a few episodes ago. But then they brought it back, right? They didn't have to actually just blow off his arm. Well, no, he's no more arm. Then now he's handicapped going into the next fight. Instead, they can do it this way, where it's more like his tech is he's too powerful, he's too good, and his tech is comes back to bite him in his ass. And I think that could be an interesting idea with him not meaning to do stuff, but his subconscious wanting to do stuff, and it just kind of answering, predicting what he would want. But he's like, no, I didn't ask for that, Yes, I want that, but I didn't ask for that. I don't really mean that seriously, right? So I think that could be an interesting idea to play with. So we see Cliff ends up going crazy, and it's revealed that it's because of a rat that got into his armor and stuff, his body, and kind of messing with him. So I think that was kind of really interesting. It was a really interesting idea and a kind of interesting motivation scene where we see nobody or hear nobody kind of motivating a rat to go after and for revenge type thing. And I think that was just kind of an interesting idea, and it was just out of nowhere. And it's these things that are just kind of silly, so silly like that make this show kind of work. And I think it's really interesting, and it's kind of really fun because they pull things literally out of a donkey's ass type thing, and it's just quite hilarious where they come with. Like I said, it's the closest thing I can correlate it to is something like Legion, but it's a lot more easier to follow where things are going on. You don't have to rewatch it a second time to just get to figure out what the storyline is. So we see at the end of this episode, we see Cyborg ends revealing that he killed his mother, and that he's not sure as to what memories are inside of him are actually his memories or from the chip that his father put in. He doesn't trust his father, so he doesn't know as to if he can trust himself or not. I think that could be really interesting. And then Hangman's daughter kind of reveals that, yeah, you're right. She shows a painting of Cyborg over all the dead team members and stuff, the rest of the dead characters and stuff, and wow, that looks so interesting. I definitely can't wait to see as to kind of where things go with that. Now, the trailer for the next episode doesn't really show too much. Just meet another person inside of Jane and stuff. It looks like she does storm off the end of this episode, so it looks like she might be, one of the personalities might be setting to get married and stuff. And I think that could be really interesting to see as to where things go. And it looks like there's some people in the wedding and stuff. And if they're doing if she went off and almost got married and stuff, but with another personality type thing, I think that could be interesting too. And it would be an interesting opportunity for what I think would be cool to see some cameos and stuff from some of the writers and the comic book writers and stuff. Could be really interesting. Maybe like Marv Wolfman, things like that. I think it could be someone interesting. Some characters would be quite fun to see some cameos from some of the prolific Doom Patrol writers in the comics. So I think it could be really interesting. So I definitely like this episode. I think it was a really interesting, down to earth episode, just getting down with the characters and stuff. It doesn't really move on the season storyline too much, but it does add the whole idea that Cyborg, is not sure if he could be trusted, and now we have, the Hangman's daughter proving that could be really interesting. And so I think that storyline is where I'm excited to see as to where things go with that. But with only, we're 7 episodes of 12 or 15. Let's see how many episodes, like 13 episodes, I think. 15 episodes, it says here on IMDb. So 7 episodes, we're just about halfway, a little bit more. So I'm not sure if they're going to be doing that. I think it would be an interesting idea for it to end with, a cliffhanger like that, for it being the idea that, that this, ends with an apocalypse or something, with Cyborg being the cause or just killing off the rest of the team. I think it could be something interesting, especially with a show like this, because they're just doing it for the DC streaming service. If it doesn't, it's not successful, and then they don't do a season 2, they can always just do a quick here's a short little movie to finish up all the cliffhangers that they leave at the end of this. So I think that could be something interesting with the streaming service things, and that's what I'm excited for. So I think this is really, so far I think it wouldn't get a season 2. I don't see why not. I think there's a bit of enough buzz online about it, but we'll have to wait and see. But I think it's going to be interesting to see as to where things go with the Cyborg storyline set up in this episode. So let me know what you think, guys, about that. Where do you think things are going to go with Cyborg? And I'll see you guys in the next video. Booyah!